The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep, open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, I have an episode that I've been wanting to do for a really, really long time, and it's bringing in a totally different perspective of Sasquatch, because a lot of the time you hear about these native stories about Sasquatch and what their interactions may have been with the tribes, but a lot of the time it's really hard to get somebody to actually come on and talk about their family stories and their experiences with this type of stuff. But today for you guys, I actually do have somebody who fits that profile and comes on and shares some of his family experiences and some of his own experiences with Sasquatch, and this one will definitely lead into future episodes. So if this is something you guys are interested in hearing more of, definitely let me know, because he's definitely willing to come back on and share even more stories, and he even leaves a little sprinkle at the end of something he could talk about in the next episode. But before we get into this one today, of course, just got a little bit of news and updates, and of course have to do the front of house stuff. First and foremost, Bizarrities, as I've been mentioning, is doing the giveaway, and that's going to be happening until the end of November, which I believe this is the last week, and the winner of that will be announced on December 1st, and all you have to do to get involved in that giveaway is go and follow Bizarrities on Instagram, and I'm going to use a random number generator out of the follow list on that one, and whoever ends up winning that one will receive a bag of both of the flavors of Bizarrities that I currently have. And then beyond that, I also dropped the new merch design for This is Squatch Country on the Open Minds Media merch store and also on the Etsy store, so whatever one you guys prefer shopping in. I really enjoy the design. I got it printed. I think it ends up looking really, really cool, and I want to give a special shout out to Chris from Conspire Theory for working on that design with me. I have all these awesome ideas, and he happens to be that guy who's able to bring all these awesome ideas to life, so just a really big special thank you to Chris out there for helping me put these awesome designs together. And the last little piece of news and updates is I'm trying to do something where maybe I collaborate a little bit more with some other podcasters. I've been kind of existing in my own sphere for a while, doing a lot of shows with a lot of the awesome researchers and stuff like that in the community. But, I want to get involved with some more podcasters. So if you're another podcaster out there and you possibly want to collaborate on a project or something like that, shoot me a message, get a hold of me in some way, shape, or form. And I'm going to hopefully start to reconnect a little bit back into the podcaster community and not just the cryptid community, of course, because I want to try to expand my horizons and connect with more of you guys, and just all around have just a bigger group of people in order to get involved and do all these different types of projects and stuff with. But on another note, just a quick message: this podcast has a strong focus on community engagement, so I encourage all listeners to share their own experiences and research on the show. That said, if you guys have an encounter or experience you would like to share on the show or have me investigate, you guys can get a hold of me through the OMM Encounter Reports email, which is ommencounterreports@outlook.com, or you guys can get a hold of me through the OMM Encounter Reports hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And when you guys get a hold of me, whether you text that, you leave a voicemail, you record yourself, or you send me an email, whatever is easiest for you guys, just let me know what you want to do with your experience. If it's something that you don't want to talk about in the show whatsoever, and you just want to have an open ear and have somebody to talk about it with, I'm always here for that kind of stuff. If you want to have it investigated, or again, if I'm on the opposite side of the country from you, I have a pretty good connection to other investigators that I might be able to send your way. Or if you strictly want it shared on the show, again, just let me know what you want to do with it, because I don't want to put anything out there that you guys don't want out there. And again, I'm always here to hear anything that you guys want to talk about in confidence. And on the other side, If you guys like to be a guest on the show, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com. And if you enjoy this show and think I deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help this show grow and improve. So thank you guys. And every single thing that I mention is all available in the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, operator of Sasquatch Island and social media and manager of SasquatchTheLegends.com store, Forks, Washington, Tom Sewid. How's it going today?
Going good. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Man of many titles, as I can see. I know that looking through your social media and everything, you got a lot of different stuff going on as far as investigating into Sasquatch.
Oh, absolutely. It's been part of my entire life, Sasquatch, because I'm a member of the SQUATCH First Nation or Indian tribe from northern Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And of all the Indian tribes in North America, our SQUATCH First Nation probably has the closest tie to Sasquatch, which we call Chunakwa. Chunakwa is our highest ranked crest. So when you go to our communities, in our graveyards, in our ceremonial big houses, welcoming poles carved out of big cedar trees, you'll see the image of Chonakwa, puckered up lips, sleepy eyes, arms outstretched sometimes, and generally the female, and there's usually breasts carved onto it and painted. And it's just proclaiming like someone having a Mercedes-Benz in their front yard or wearing a Rolex watch. Or by having a Chonakwa crest displayed, like on my shirt, you're showing that your family has title to that crest. And, you know, it shows that you're from a family of wealth because our ancestors could afford to acquire that crest through the great ceremony of potlatch, you know, which was basically everything to our people for thousands of years and still is.
Wow, that's awesome. This is actually the first opportunity that I've actually had to have somebody on that's native to actually talk about this stuff, because a lot of the time it seems like when I try to contact people, a lot of the stories are kind of kept within tribes and within families, and there's not too many people that really want to talk about too much stuff. So it's really exciting that I actually have somebody on today that has a whole family connection to this type of stuff, and I can actually connect it into Native American culture versus somebody coming on and basically just spouting information that they've collected third hand from somebody else. So,
yeah, and what you just said there is exactly why I became, I guess you could say, an investigator, celebrity, because of I've reached sort of that level where people are coming to the store from around North America, especially to the U.S. and even from far away as Europe and Australia, just to come and see me, get a picture with me with the big Sasquatch that we have in the store behind me, big mannequin. And we call them biggies, 8.5 feet tall. And, people are buying my native designs on my shirts, my book, shower curtains, mats, tumblers, cups, you name it. We got my native art on all those merchandise items, as well as the side of the building. My wife and I, Peggy, painted murals on there 3 years ago. So, it's a real statement about I guess you could say, the commercialization of our crests of Sasquatch into the Sasquatch industry. Some people would, balk at that and go, oh, how can you commodify a native crest like Sasquatch, Jonah? And I just give you a head a shake. We Indians have been doing it since the first rusty iron got dropped in a bay in Pacific Northwest, Canada or USA. We were out there in our canoes going, hey, I like your pots, pans, knife, and guns. You want to make a trade? So it's always been there. And, you just have to go to the art galleries in our cities like across North America that have West Coast Native art. And, I've seen them as far away as Ottawa, Canada. Even seen it in, Alberta, British Columbia, throughout British Columbia, Washington State, and right down to California. You see West Coast Native art, and you'll always see an image of Sasquatch, usually depicted from the Kwakwaka'wakw, my tribe, called Chonakwa, because it's so well known and it's been out there because our artists have been making masks and other items out of wood and silver and gold and ivory that has depictions of our highest ranked crest, which is, of course, Sasquatch. So, it's a new era, and it's Sasquatch as an industry is really starting to boom here in the Pacific Northwest, Canada, and the U.S.
I mean, even on the other side too, a matter of just getting into it also to kind of get rid of just people too much like glorifying it and commercializing it, because at least then you can still kind of have like the native voice involved, and you can still, you know, share the native stories and not let it get too far off hand where it gets completely past, you know, anything that anybody expected it to be. Because at least coming from, you know, somebody who's serious into like investigating this type of stuff, as I'm sure you are yourself too, you know, you hate when people start kind of getting too far off the deep end and creating like these ridiculous scenarios that you know aren't true, and it just ends up becoming part of the folklore, and then it like pulls away from like the actual authenticity of this type of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's what I call woo-woo. The orb turning, porthole jumping, UFO flying, cloaking, mind speaking Sasquatch. I've had 6 really close encounters with Sasquatch, and I've been around them well over 30 times, knowing that they were there because I either saw bushes moving, or I could smell them, or hear them, or had something thrown at me. But in all those encounters and close encounters with Sasquatch, I never experienced any of what I call the woo-woo side, the holistic mumbo jumbo you hear about. And that's why I really wanted to become someone that was on the stages during conferences and on social media, was to get the word out that, number one, Sasquatches, from my experience, have never done that. And when people say, well, so-and-so said it happened to him. And I said, well, being a grizzly bear hunting guide for over 20 years, and you got a wounded grizzly bear charging you, and you got to drop to your knee with that rifle, and it's you and that grizzly bear. One of you is going to get pooped out in the next couple of days by one of the critters. It's either the grizzly's going to win or I'm going to win. Well, you're sitting there and your throat's dry. You can hear your heart pounding in your head. Your knees are shaking. You're trying not to shake at all as you boom, 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 put 3 into that grizz, jump off sideways and put that 4th one in his shoulder and hit his heart lung and blow the outside shoulder. That's a very terrifying experience. And I've done it a few times. And, it's almost like, wow, looking at that grizzly, he looked like he was like 12 feet tall when I first saw him charging me. Just a 600-pound teenager. But boy, he sure had attitude because of that stupid hunter who went and put a bullet in him and got too scared and ran away, and I had to go put him down. So knowing that you can get so scared, and, like when I was a commercial fisherman for over 45 years of my life, getting in hurricane-force storms, seeing waves the size of mountains, your deck's underwater, just slamming as waves hit you, feeling the boat heel right over on her side, and you don't think she's going to tumble home and come back up even keel again. Your throat's dry, your knees are shaking, and, when it's over, within a few days, you don't think about it no more. But when you're in the bar talking to your buddies, well, that storm comes up in your story. Well, the waves are bigger than what they were. The sounds are more terrifying than what they were. And that's what I equate into the woo of Sasquatch. People get so shit scared by seeing, smelling, hearing a Sasquatch that all of a sudden a mental Band-Aid kicks in, and they dealt with their trauma, their fright, their terror by coming up with, all of a sudden it just vanished and it cloaked and there was a little bit of mist, and that's what I call a mental Band-Aid. And I think that's what that whole aspect is. And that's why I wanted to be what I'm doing right now with your podcast show, getting the word out. That doesn't happen, not from my experiences. And then the other one is Sasquatch is being perceived like Jesus Christ. We look at Jesus Christ and he has blue eyes, fair skins, hair's all nice and light brown with blonde touches and highlights. And he looks like he came from the banks of the Thames River, London, England, 2,000 years ago. Well, excuse me, Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem. He comes from a part of the world where the people are dark, olive skin, different looking hair, different facial features than what we have perceived Jesus Christ to look like. He doesn't look like that Caucasian from the banks of the Thames River. He would have looked like something else, and from Bethlehem area of the world. Well, Sasquatch is going down that same path. We see Sasquatch carvings, paintings, T-shirt designs where they look like they jumped off the back of a Harley Davidson seat, or they came out of a Kentucky moonshine camp. They got these big-ass beards. Sasquatches don't have beards and these huge mustaches. They look like I would look if I tried to grow a big beard. I'd look as pathetic as your scruffy-looking beard there. because that's the way us Indians are. We're thoroughbred, so we have very limited facial hair. And you can count my chest hairs on one hand with 3 fingers. And my wife, when we got together 16 years ago, accused me of shaving my legs because I had no hair on my legs. So that's a thoroughbred Indian. Sasquatches have that same trait on their face, except their body's covered in hair. They're bigger, they have nocturnal vision, and they've retained the ability to excrete scent from their armpit glands when they feel threatened or intimidated. So that's why us Indians refer to Sasquatch as members of the other tribe. Why we call them cannibals, cannibal giants, cannibals from the mountains, cannibals from the forest, and some Indian languages, when it got translated to English, that's what their word for Sasquatch meant. Well, if we're calling Sasquatch a cannibal and a wolf, a bear, a cougar eats a human, they aren't a cannibal. They're a human killer. But when a Sasquatch eats a human, they're termed a cannibal. So it tells you right there what a Sasquatch is. They're a human. Bigger, hairier, nocturnal vision. That's all.
We will be right back after this brief commercial break. But just a quick reminder, if you guys want to stay up to date on the show, you guys can always go and follow Inquiries of Our Reality and Open Minds Media on Instagram, Facebook, Discord, YouTube, and TikTok. Now feel free to fast forward through these commercials so we can hop right back into the show. And we are back, so let's get back to it. There's all the DNA testing, too, that they've brought up, where it usually has the female DNA, and usually a lot of people say it's like Native American descendant. And of course, I mean, that would be what it is. I mean, a lot of the facial structures that people describe are usually that. And it's not until you start getting into some of the weird areas where you have to bring in the possibility of there being like feral families. And I think that a lot of the time, people might be seeing some of these feral families in like Kentucky and stuff like that. They may have been there for generations, and they're more just like the hillsman type people, but they're mistaking them for Sasquatch. And maybe that's where some of the descriptions with the big beards are coming from, is just they're big burly woods guys. Like they're not Sasquatch. They're people that have just been living there for generations.
Yeah. And, you know, there's that one picture that's going around social media right now of that biker looking dark brown skinned, big, giant human. And when I see it, I don't see a Sasquatch. I see a feral human, a human that was out in the bush. And, I bulked up pretty good when I lived in bush for over 20 years, because you're always swinging an axe, getting firewood. You're always packing something heavy up a beach at low tide, be it 50-pound bottles of water or jerry cans of gasoline or big D-cell batteries. So when you're living a bush existence, you're working hard constantly from sun up to sundown. And, you bulk up. And when I went into the bush one time where I just got sick of mankind and humanity, I just disappeared for months on end. And I snapped. I feraled. I got back to northern Vancouver Island. I couldn't even sleep in my hotel. When I heard the ambulance and sirens go by my hotel window, I just started shaking, like a dog in fireworks. And I just ran out the door, across the street into the timber, ran as far in so I couldn't hear or smell humans anymore. And I found a place to sleep, and I went to sleep. Next morning at crack of dawn, I walked out of the forest across the street into the hotel, and my ex-girlfriend happened to be watching the front desk, and she's laughing away at me, all muddy and wet. She goes, "You couldn't sleep in the hotel room last night, could you?" I said, "No, I've heard those ambulances," and I just cracked. I had to get back in the bush. And she goes, "You're such a wild one." And, that's what parallelism is. And I've been there, and so, a lot of people ask me about with Sasquatches, how come you don't come sit with us at our campfires and grab whatever you do to make a s'more or whatever those things are. I had it once with my wife, but, why don't they do that? Well, do you blame them? We have nothing good to give them, and they look around and they see what we, the hairless bipedal, has done to their environment, our environment. Rivers depleted of salmon and trout and steelhead, and shellfish beaches devoid of shellfish, invasive Asian crabs coming in, invasive varnish clams, invasive plants all over the place here in the Pacific Northwest. Berry patches gone because of invasive Himalayan blackberry and broom and other invasive plants like knotweed and hogweed. And Sasquatch, when they see us, they just turn and leave. I don't blame them. They despise us, hate us, loathe us, fear us even. And I don't blame them at all, because I was there. I would tree peek humans one time, and I'd let the branch up, turn, walk away. As much as I wanted that cigarette that guy was smoking, as much as I wanted to drink the coffee that guy had poured out of his thermos, and as much as I wanted to chat to that cute little girl that was my age at the time in my early 20s, I just put the branch up, turned, and vanished back into the forest because I didn't want to be with those hairless bipedals. Well, I'm a hairless bipedal too, but with them, I was just so bushed and, made the progression back to bliss, back to the bush world.
I mean, not to mention too how many generations of people have shot at these things whenever they come in encounter with them. So I mean, they probably just don't want to take the possibility on top of that somebody might end up pulling a firearm on them, because even if it doesn't necessarily kill them, I mean, it's still going to hurt them, and no animal wants to get intentionally hurt, or being whatever you want to kind of refer to them as.
Yeah, which brings up another good point. People always say, "Well, do you think they know about firearms?" I'm like, well, every species has to come together for mating to spread the seed. You can't stay within your pack or your tribe or your clan. You have to have the males go out and compete with other males and topple them and take over their pack or their whatever. And, that being said, with the Sasquatches, we hear some pretty good recordings, like the couple and with the low light video camera sitting in their pontoon boat on a trailer behind their truck with a broken transmission somewhere in the Pacific Northwest about 5 or 8 years ago, with their two dogs terrified. And you can hear mass vocalizations of Sasquatches all around. And, when I heard that, because I've actually heard it out in the bush before, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and this tingled. And I was just like, wow, they're having a gathering. And what they're doing is just like two grizzly bears when there's that female grizzly in heat in June. Two or three grizzlies are out on the beach and they're posturing and showcasing each other and looking all mean and nasty and bluff charging. And this weaker one, a smaller one, will take those posturing threats and vocalizations as, yeah, okay, I'm not big enough to fight you. I'm out of here. And he takes off. But the other one, he's like, all right, come on, let's get it on. And they get into a fight. And the next thing you know, he's got a big chunk of his flesh hanging down, his bones and muscles and fat are showing. His face is all torn up, his ears ripped off, and he's limping as he runs away with the big boar chasing him. And the big boar comes back and he gets to mate. He's the strongest one. So you had the vocalization, you had the posturing, the rah, that bears don't do that, mind you, but they hit things, tear up the ground, bluff charge. Well, when you hear the mass vocalization from that couple and they're broken in their pontoon boat on a trailer behind their truck, that's clans of Sasquatches coming together. Well, if they're the other tribe, as we call them, they have to have powwow and potlatch like us North American indigenous people. And like the newcomers that came to the continent, be it prospectors, trappers, explorers, or just wanting to get to the other side of the continent, they would have their rendezvous, be it annually or every couple of years, just like the Indians have their annual every couple of years powwow or potlatch. And the reason why they come together is to have that socializing, communication, finding out what's going on the other side of the mountains and down or upriver. And then you look over as the party's taking place in the night, and there's the young couples disappearing into the darkness to go bump uglies, to strengthen this genetic pool. That's God, nature's code. So the Sasquatches have to do the same. And then, me being an investigator that's researched with numerous Indian tribes and asked questions most non-Indian Sasquatch investigators wouldn't ask, like, do you have any stories about your shaman, how they would disappear as apprentices for years on end and come back with the knowledge to be able to cure the people in the tribe? Oh, I never thought about that since I was a young boy, and now I'm in my late 80s. But I remember my great-grandfather talking about that, how our shaman disappeared for over 2 years, came back and had the knowledge. Did he tell you how he got the knowledge? No. But others ask the same questions, tell me, like some of the tribes I've interacted with, that their shaman apprentices were interacting, living with the Sasquatches, learning the medicinal medicines and remedies and poultices. And that's why the Omaha Indian tribe call their Sasquatch Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. And when I was communicating and learning from Omaha shaman lady, her young boy looked up at me and goes, "Hey, mister, have you seen Big Hairy Man?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, 2 nights ago, where that house is, that looks like an igloo over there." He goes, "Oh, that's me and Mom's house." And I said, "I saw 2 Sasquatches, a big male about 7.5 feet tall and a big female about 6.5 feet tall that was very pronounced pregnant walking across the field." And we were looking at him with the FLIR night vision from about 80 yards, me and this Omaha tribe member. And she goes, "Oh yeah, they were going to my house." I said, "For what?" And she goes, "Oh, I pick plants from root to the top of the plant, and I lay it on a table with food offerings off to the side. At night, Sitonga, they come and they pick the buds or the leaves or the bark or the roots or the berries, the flowers, whatever's medicinal at that time, that season, and they leave it on the table, and everything else they'll push off the table or down to the end. And then they'll take the food, and then I have to take what they left and use it for medicine or figure out how to pick more and how to use it for medicine." And I said, "Well, how would you know that?" She goes, "Well, we have common knowledge, like this type of plant is good for chest congestion, this type of plant is good for infection, or this plant is good for pain. I now know where the highest concentrations of the medicine is." And, that was very interesting to me. And then I asked her, "How old does a Sasquatch get?" And she goes, 150, 180 years, some over 200 when you see the white ones and the gray ones. And I just looked at her and I went, "How does Sasquatch get so old?" Oh, she looked mad. "Well, aren't you listening to what I've been teaching you? Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. They have forgotten more about medicines in their environment than we will ever know. And that's how they live so long." And then as an investigator, where some people listening right now are probably going, "Damn, he got some insight into Sasquatch to share with us." When I look at Sasquatches and get the encounter reports and read about others from past decades and so forth, I've noticed there's an established pattern. We don't have any reports of like a grizzly bear walking up a river during salmon spawning time, and there's 10 to 15 feet of huge tapeworm hanging out their back end, dragging along the gravel. That's gross.
Yeah.
That's a sick bear. But the bear knows that when it's time to den up, after he finishes his last meal, he'll go to a river and he'll start eating clay, so that when he goes to sleep and dens up, the clay from his stomach to his rectum, because he checks his poop, as soon as he sees the clays coming out, he now knows he's plugged. Now I can go to sleep. The tapeworms will suffocate as he sleeps instead of eating them from the inside out and killing them while he's hibernating. So if bears know medicinal remedies like that, but then we see bears that are afflicted with tapeworm, and I've skinned well over 500 bears, and man, I've seen some nasty parasites inside them in all different forms, shapes, and yuck. But, we look at, and I've seen bears with abscesses where the side of their face is just huge, with a big, huge size of a football full of pus. And, bears that have gangrene where their eye was because it got taken out in a fight or it ran into something, I guess, a branch, but it's all gangrene and stink. But we see deer with all kinds of afflictions and elk, but we don't have any reports out there of Sasquatches with big, huge abscess goiters on their faces and different things like that. And, right there is giving us proof to what the tribes tell us about Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. They know how to cure things. They live over 150 years old. They know how to keep themselves living long time. And, it's just, when I look at all of that, studying Sasquatch, it gives me a better understanding when I ask those in-depth questions to my fellow North American Indians that I interact with.
I'd love to dive into some of your family stories if you don't mind diving into it, because it seems like with a lot of people, when they are again, kind of like second generation sharing some of these stories, especially coming from like native stories, it seems like there's a lot of like mysticism that's involved. But on the other side of it too, it may just be people kind of playing fisherman tale with this kind of stuff, because my grandma was Cherokee, so I grew up with her telling me different stories and stuff. And one of the stories was basically that, they didn't want to interact with them anymore after like the white man started coming, because they started like mixing in the genetics. And again, she was like she was Cherokee, and of course those were the first tribes that started kind of getting the settler mix in with them. So it seems like the stories kind of stopped there for the most part. But there was within those stories, once she would tell me where somebody would go off into the woods and they would make this connection with Sasquatch, and they would give him like the knowledge of the land, which again is kind of paralleling exactly what you're saying, just a little bit of a different way of saying it, and kind of taking some of like the mysticism part out of it. But maybe that's again just because of people kind of playing telephone with these stories, that it kind of pulls away from the real world part of it, and it kind of creates more of this like folklore story around it, even though it's still kind of paralleling the same concept.
Yeah.
We will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. But don't forget to check out Bizarre Tees, creature-inspired tees made by yours truly, available for order on the Open Minds Media Etsy store, or join the Bizarre Tees Tea Club on Patreon to receive a monthly tea subscription and samples of new blends, along with full access to the Open Minds Media Patreon. And we are back with the high strangeness. Let's get back into it. But yeah, if you were okay with sharing, I'd love to dive into like some of the stories that maybe you kind of grew up hearing about these beings.
Oh, well, these far back as I can remember, when Dad would go, "Tommy, you behave yourself. Showing off a female Sasquatch watching you. She's not allowed to touch you. But if you misbehave, talk back, lazy, don't eat your food, pull a temper tantrum, when you're sleeping at night, Junach is going to come with a big hairy arm and reach in to where you're sleeping and grab you. It's going to rub tree sap from a spruce tree in your eyes so you can't open them and you're blind. She's going to throw you in her basket on her back. You and the other misbehaving children she captures, she's going to bring you into the forest, up the mountain to her invisible home. That's where we can't find them. And that's where she's going to boil you up and eat you. So you behave yourself." And, I remember being out, we went out picking seaweed in May, and I was just a young kid slipping and sliding. I was asked to do something. Of course, I started acting up, and right away, hear one of the old native ladies, I think that was my great grandmother, da, 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 in her spoken Indian, our language, Kakula. But I understood what she said. "You behave yourself, you young kids. Chonach was watching you." And, I remember just like, oh, shoot. Well, where's that bucket of seaweed I was told to pack down to the boat? I better do it right now. And I brought my kids up the same way. And I remember scaring the bejesus out of them, but, it worked. It was our boogeyman. And then as a young boy, I remember running down I was born on an island called Alert Bay. It's about 2 miles long, 3 miles long, half a mile wide. It's shaped like an old telephone handle. And in the bay, the road ran along the waterfront. And I ran down with the kids down to Eddie Wong's, I guess you could call it a corner store. That was actually on pilings over the beach. But we ran down there and we bought some candy, penny candies, and we were playing on the beach. And then all of a sudden I looked up and I noticed the sun had gone down behind the mountains to the west on Vancouver Island. I was like, oh no, I got to get home. I'm running down the street. It's almost dark, and all of a sudden I stop at the shipyards. I'm creeping along this brown house, and I know that there's the burial ground, the graveyard, and it's filled with memorial carved cedar totem poles. And on 5 of them are the carvings of Chonacha, the Sasquatch, at the bottom with outstretched arms. And all I kept thinking was, behind the graveyard where all the bushes are, that Chunuk was going to run out and grab me because I'm misbehaving. I'm not home. And boy, I was just running as fast as I could, crying my eyes out. And all of a sudden, a car honked, and I turned and jumped in. It was one of my family members. "What are you doing, Tommy? It's almost dark. You shouldn't be out. You're too young." So he drove me home. Boy, I was terrified going by that graveyard, I tell you. And it wasn't because of ghosts. It was because of those Chunuk Sasquatch carved memorial poles. And, that's the stories that how we've heard it. Even the cover of my book, Sasquatch Island, that I sell, I have a picture that I drew of a female Sasquatch with a basket with a kid stuck in the basket, and she's reaching out for a young girl, grabbing another misbehaving child. And, because it stayed with me a lifetime. It's still with me. And, people are pretty touched when people come in the store and, I'll make a glossy print 8x10 with plexiglass frame. And I have them out for I think under $15. We sold out. And this shows how many people have heard that story in the Pacific Northwest about the basket lady, the Sasquatch that steals misbehaving children. So it's pretty nice that, people have that much understanding of Sasquatch from not just my tribe, the other Indian tribes as well. And it's just getting bigger and bigger. We look at it with the conference circuit now, how, there's more and more Indians being invited to the conferences, more Indian tribes hosting conferences. This weekend there's the Quinault Indian tribe south of here having their Sasquatch festival. What do you go? David Pilates stopped in the store about 5 o'clock yesterday, and he's a good friend of mine. After meeting him on the Bigfoot cruise ship that we were on last year, going to Alaska from Seattle, I got to know him, and he interviewed me for one of his documentaries, and then I was at the Juneau conference with him, or Ketchikan. I can't remember what town it was in Alaska. And, I was on stage with him, and, we really got to interact. And, when he showed up last night and he just come in to see the store and say hello, pointed up on the wall, his picture, showed him where his books are that we sell of his. And just before he left, he bought my deerskin drum that I painted a native Sasquatch design on. So that was an honor. So you can go to Sasquatch Island, my Facebook group, and see the picture of him and I standing together, holding the drum that he bought. So, it was pretty touching to have that happen. But it's, guys like that, and Cliff Barrickman's no different. They've all the guys that and girls that are in the Sasquatch industry at conferences, podcasts, documentaries, and that, they're always asking me about Basket Lady and Sasquatch and what our beliefs and perspectives are. And, and that's, I think I'm doing my job since 2015 when I became a, speaker about Sasquatch and sharing my native perspectives and my understanding and my experiences, because I'm teaching people that if you're going to go investigate Sasquatch in your local area, or you're going to go somewhere else because you think it's a hot spot, interact, communicate with the local Indian tribe. Go on the internet, talk to them, talk to their linguists, talk to their college or their local university, because they all have Indian departments, and find out basic words of how to say hello. I come in peace. I mean no harm. I'm not a threat. Goodbye. I've brought you some food. Learn the basic local tongue of that native Indian language, because more than likely, that tribe, as most tribes, have been interacting with Sasquatch since the dawn of our creations. So the Sasquatches can understand and communicate. Pidgin, mind you, limited, that for my tribe anyway, and others I've talked to, but I'm sure there's a couple tribes out there, especially the ones that are very tight-lipped and secretive about their Sasquatches and their territories, that probably can have an ongoing conversation with them. But anyway, learn those things. You'll be amazed when you're investigating and you hear something, smell something. Very hard to see them. They're always hiding. But all of a sudden, start talking in that local Indian tongue. You'll be surprised what might take place.
That's actually another thing that kind of connects in with one of the stories I grew up with my grandma telling me, was that you'd sing something in Cherokee and that's what would draw them in. So again, it's that language that ends up bringing them in because it's what they're familiar with. And actually, since you were kind of bringing up the tribe's perspective, another question that I was going to ask you about it is, it makes it at least it seems like most of the time, most tribes full well know these things exist. They full well believe in them. But from the outside perspective, when you kind of come into these different tribes and end up talking to them, does it seem like it's one of those things where every single person knows about them and believes in them, or does it seem like there's still kind of a portion where there's the people that know they exist, and then the other half kind of just almost tell the stories as allegory to scare the kids to not run off into the woods and stuff? Does it seem pretty universal that everybody believes, or is it kind of split like the rest of the kind of Bigfoot society is?
Universal, but unfortunately, when we go into those Indian reservations or our communities and you see those steeples with the cross on top, darn well that's a red flag that, a lot of the native Indians have accepted Christianity hook, line, and sinker. I'm a Christian, but not a fanatic over it. But the fanatical ones have erased talking about Sasquatch. Like even my own family out in central Canada, of my mother's side, Cree Indians, they're really into the Bible thumping. And, I know there's some good reports from some of my family members, but they kind of quelch it because, it's sort of taboo. We don't talk about it. Even go so far as say, oh, Sasquatch is a demon, so Christianity, unfortunately, like as we know, has eradicated a lot of our culture and heritage and still does to this day. But then there's the other side, be it a minority or a majority, depending on the Indian tribe. But, some tribes are very tight lipped. They won't even talk about it. I've been at a conference twice now where I started talking about comparing our Chunach, our Sasquatch, to the Bukwus, the little people, the little hair-covered bipedal creatures that we call Bukwus in my tribe. Other tribes call them stick people or the little people, or in their native language, they have a name for it. But the stories are out there and building because more and more of us Indians are coming forth and sharing our understanding of what we've been sharing our environments with, our homelands. And people are starting to really clue into this small hair-covered bipedal. Maybe it's came over the land bridge during the ice ages and it's Homo florensis. We don't know until we get good evidence, but we do know Homo florensis, the hobbit, was out there and possibly still is. And but the Indians, if you mentioned Bakwus, like I did twice at a conference, the little people, stick people, I actually saw them get up, grab their stuff, and leave because it's so taboo. You don't even talk about the little people, and that's some of the tribes. I can't speak for any other tribe other than my tribe and my family. What I have rights and title to our stories and legends, songs, and crests. But it's like the double dorsal fin killer whale. It's seen in Kwakwakiwak and Lehwata native art and other tribes, but I can't talk about it. Even though my sister's ex-husband's family from Northern Vancouver Island had title and rights and crest of the double dorsal fin killer whale, it doesn't give me rights to share that legends and story. I can't even draw it in our law. So it comes the same with Sasquatch and little people is, I can go so far. I can share like with the Omaha because I got permission from my friend who's an Omaha tribe member and 3 others there that said, yeah, no, you can share what you've heard from me out here and what you've experienced. And other tribes as well. Like I lived up in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. Some of my friends up there, oh yeah, no, you can talk about what I shared with you about Naga, the name for their Sasquatch, as my friends that are when I lived in Haida Gwaii, which was called Queen Charlotte Islands off northern British Columbia's coast, the big archipelago of the Haida Indians. My Haida friends said, oh, yeah, you can talk about Gogich and, tell them what I told you. So, but other tribes I haven't talked with or communicated with, I might have read something, but I'm not going to go in deep on it. I don't have that right or title, and it's disrespectful. It breaks our code, our law. But, for anyone that's out there, whether you're in a state in the U.S. or a province or territory in Canada, or you're in Mexico, or even if you're in the outback, Australia, and go talk to the indigenous people that have lived there since the dawn of creation. Get their protocols and their permissions and their support to go do your investigations and learn some of the words for I come in peace, I mean no harm, hello, goodbye, I've brought you some food, and it'll definitely increase your chances of having a close encounter of the hairy kind. Trust me.
And I mean, even with that too, I mean, it's better to do it that way, just off the aspect of, I feel like you're kind of starting to get somewhere with like the real research of it, because I totally understand the whole concept of like keeping stories within, because then you don't have the influence of people starting to kind of deter from the stories. But like while you're holding the stories on the inside, then you have people creating these ridiculous stories on the outside. So it's like you end up having these 2 sides of the narrative where it's like one group completely understands these stories and you have the outside that has these experiences and they totally take on a totally different thing of their own. And I mean, one perfect example of this is like the Wendigo, not to get into that whole concept, but if you get into like how most people view it now, it's extremely different from how it used to be described, because the stories got away, because I feel like it was a matter of, again, people didn't really want to share those stories. And that's one of those ones that people, it's taboo that you don't really want to talk about to begin with. So in turn, it's like you protect the stories, but then people create wild stories, and then it takes on a whole life of its own that's completely different from whatever was in the first place. Hold on tight, guys. We're going to take a brief commercial break, but if you'd like to rock some gear for your favorite podcast or creature, hop on over to the Open Minds Media Store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. And we are back to the show, so let's hop right in.
Brings up a good point. What you mentioned about what you called Wendigo. When I went to Mom, who's Cree and fluent in her language, I said, what do you know about Wendigo? Say it the way it's supposed to be said. Wendigo. Wendigo, Tommy. So Wendigo, she explained to me, is our Sasquatch. Well, at first she said, I really heard a little bit. Let me talk to my sisters and my brother. And after chattering for probably a couple, 3-4 weeks, what do you know about Wendigo now? And she shared with me. And I'm like, wow, okay. So then I researched, read about people what call Wendigo and Wendigo book, and what I call Wendigo in my tongue of Cree, my other bloodline. And then because of my bush experience and my knowledge and my anthropological background and my science background, because as a kid, I was called Dilton Doyle, like the Dilton Doyle of the Archie comic books. I always had big black frame glasses, big hair, and I always had my head in the book. And on Indian Reserve, I remember getting bullied because I was always reading books, staying after school to learn even more, going to the library. God forbid, an Indian on an Indian Reserve going to the library? Whoever thought you'd see that? And I get picked on because I was Dilton Doyle. And what are you trying to do, Tommy? Remember who you are, boy. You're just an Indian. You're not going to be like them. But I wanted to absorb knowledge. And then when I, growing up, it was always National Geographic. I remember I was introduced to the first encyclopedia. I just sat there for weeks upon weeks, reading my way from A to Z, whatever you want to call it. And I was so enthralled by this collection of books would have that much information about so much things that just enthralled me. And then when I got to Shawnigan Lake Boys Private School, grade 8 and 9, an Ivy League boarding school that I went to, they introduced me to the reference library that had all the National Geographics from volume 1 right through to 1979 when I got there. And they had these other books, Life magazine from the first edition onwards, and all these different other types of encyclopedias and things. So I was constantly learning, but part of it was always trying to learn about the Sasquatch. What's the correlation? What's the relationship? What can we compare Sasquatch to, or how to get close to them? And that's when I'm like, hey, National Geographic, Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall, and Leakey. I got to go read more of their stuff. And then I found their books and I read into those, so that when I look at and try to understand and come up to rhyme or reason about Sasquatch, I'm using all of that stuff and knowledge that I learned. And, it's amazing that when you look at Sasquatch and on a social level, and you reflect upon what Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall wrote in their books, and in their reports. I read one of the reports from Diane Fossey before she died, and it was ingenious. Like, they knew not to look eye contact them. They knew to hunch their shoulders. They knew that when you got charged, you just looked down and went to a passive, like you're weak, and the big silverback would just turn and huff and walk away. Might do it 3 more times, and so when you equate that into Sasquatchology, I'm finding tool use by Sasquatches that's, like most people would overlook it. We found a cave here dug into glacial alluvial till, which is basically gravel and sand compacted solids. And then they dug into this big sheer wall along the river, 80 feet up from the flat, where the alder trees are and the grasses, and you see all the elk tracks everywhere. But 80 feet up, they dug this cave just big enough for you could envision 2 or 3 Sasquatches in there, a family, taking shelter from the winds. It's back to the prevailing southeast wind, which is howling outside 40 knots right now. But that cave, there ain't no wind going in it because it's at the base of the cliff. trees all around, and its back is to the southeast prevailing wind. But can you imagine being that Sasquatch sitting in there? Because I found a round boulder the size of a cantaloupe sitting in that cleared out cave where they were using. And you can just imagine them in a big stormy night like this, and they got nocturnal vision, the wind's blowing, all of a sudden they hear something, look out their cave, and there's a herd of elk. Well, that big old Sasquatch has got to grab that rock and poof, stove in a head, cave in the ribs, knock the elk down, run down, grab it by its neck, snap its neck. There's food for a week or longer. And, I found things in the past, like I was in my garden the other day in Kent, Washington, south of Seattle, before we came over here to Forks, where I live and work. But as I'm looking in the garden, I'm looking at all my round stones and oval stones. And I remember one I picked up, and I'm like, damn, I remember picking that stone up because it was kind of oval shaped, pretty big for my hand, but it fits. But it's broken and fractured on each end. And where I found it was a place which was filled with cockle shells and horse clam shells. And I think what was happening was the Sasquatch was bringing the shellfish up, and the beach was probably some 3/4 of a mile away. I was up a hill on an island, and where there was an overhang, and here's these broken shells, which right away I knew was from Chonach, a Sasquatch. And I remember looking and seeing stones that were worked primitively compared to some fine flint knapping work that we've seen and can see on the internet and television and books and in museums. It was very rudimentary and crude, but you could see that they were definitely worked. And I think I found the main tool that they were using for knocking those rocks, and that's why it has the two big fractures on it. And then I found numerous times round rocks, some the size of an apple, others the size of navel orange, some the size of a cantaloupe, that are out in the middle of nowhere where there's an intersection of animal trails, and the prevailing wind shows that where this rock is, a Sasquatch was set up there, had imported from the beach or the river, which was a couple miles away, this round rock times 1 or 2 or 3, and they have them sitting there at their hunting station. So what we can do with a 22 single shot rifle, a Sasquatch can do with a rock. So when I find those round stones, I know I shouldn't have done it. I kind of regret it now. I was a lot younger and stupid back then and disrespectful, but I should have left those rocks alone. They belong to Sasquatches. But I have them in my collection. I gave one to Cliff Barrickman that actually saw a Sasquatch jump and run where it was in its hunting position. We spooked it by coming into the wind behind it over the crest of the hill. And me and my buddy watched that big Sasquatch look at us, push off, and just bing, jump, crash, bing, boom, down the hill and gone. But as he first jumped, I seen something roll from where his right hand was on this big blow down cedar tree, about 5 foot thick, 4 foot thick. And when afterwards we went and looked, and I found that round rock, and now it's in Cliff Barrickman's museum in Boring, Oregon. I gave it to him last year when he came to our Sasquatch conference here in Forks, Washington. I gave it to him as a gift for his museum with a little write-up. And now I got a couple more I brought with me the other day that I'll put in our museum here in Forks, along with that hammerstone, I call it. And right there shows tool use. And we know Sasquatches use tools to a certain extent, but Omaha taught me, and other tribes, they have laws, very strict laws. Then they'll talk about the Sasquatch, and they'll end it by saying, the Sasquatch has laws, very strict laws. That's why they don't use fire, why they don't have permanent shelter, why they don't have clothing, why they don't use tools for the most part. They have laws, very strict laws. So that, to me, is intelligence.
I am so glad that you've brought up all this stuff that you've brought up, because this is a lot of stuff that I've thrown theories about that I had no backing to, but it was just a feeling I had, specifically the tool use, because a lot of people like to equate them to being ape-like. So of course, apes use rocks, they use different tools. You've seen this happen before. So assumably these things are going to have the ability to do it too. But my assumption is that their intelligence level is around the same as like what humans are. It's just a matter of we've progressed in the aspect of technology where these things have advanced in the aspect of nature. And like you've said, they've forgotten more about medicine and then stuff that's naturally there than we'll ever even know. So, I mean, it's a totally different type of intelligence. People they think that they're, maybe a little bit lower than us, but I think it's exactly the same intelligence level. It's just a matter of what they've learned through their environments, and knowing that they have their own laws too kind of brings even more validity into the intelligence factor of these things, and even more so why you don't come across a Sasquatch having a fire, you don't come across normal Sasquatch tools, is because I'm assuming that one of those laws is that if you can't have a permanent shelter, you're not going to make tools that are obviously looking like tools. So I mean, I think that they could probably make like a little bit more advancement of tools, but it probably is within one of their laws that they can't leave anything behind that's going to be obvious that it was one of their tools. Because if you start seeing like stone axes or something like that in the middle of the woods, people are going to start questioning it.
You make two good points there in your talk. First one you made was we've progressed. Our second one, first one you made was they've shown intelligence that they could be thinking at the same level as us. That was your first mistake. They're the perfect human. They're more intelligent than us. We'll go to the grocery store and buy prawns, aka shrimp, frozen, and salmon, and we won't think twice about it. But because I'm from the Pacific Northwest, commercial fisherman most of my life, I will not eat Atlantic salmon farm fish. Why would I eat a hot dog when I'm a cattle rancher in Texas when I can eat a T-bone and a filet every day?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to eat farm fish. I will never, ever eat tilapia, farmed tilapia, or farmed prawns. I went to a restaurant and I ordered their all-you-can-eat prawn appetizer. This was just before COVID. I remember, this is going to be good. I'm going to eat them out of house and home. I put that first one in. And when you drive by a pig farm and you smell that fecal stink pink pig's poop smell, that's what those shrimp tasted like. So then I learned that when they grow farm shrimp prawns in the Philippines and other places like that, they grow them in cesspools that are filled with pig and cow feces, even human feces. That's what they feed the shrimp prawns that we eat and buy as farmed prawns, or buy in the restaurants as a prawn appetizer or a sushi roll. That's why I try to make sure it's wild Argentinian or Alaskan or British Columbia wild stuff. I'll pay the extra price. I don't want to eat poop because it shows how stupid we are as a bipedal creature. We will defecate and grow our food in the defecation, night soil, and we will fornicate. This for the fact of fornicating. Well, that's why there's 11 billion of us now. And then the next point you made was we have progressed with technology. Have we? We are sitting here terrified. At least I know I am.
Of AI?
We have never been closer to Armageddon in our life with Putin and dumb Zelensky and Biden the idiot, and the list goes on, all ready to push their nuclear buttons, because our ancestor took two rocks and went like that and made spark and made fire. And then our other part of that clan said, hey, what are you doing? We see lightning, we've seen fire, we see the fires in the time of heat, but we have laws, very strict laws. We don't use fire. But they sitting there going, but I'm cold. Oh, let's just keep using fire. So they broke the laws, and all of a sudden the tribe split. The ones who adhered to the laws stayed as IKNOWSQUATCH, the creator, wanted, in harmony and balance with the environment, not using fire. But the other part that broke away would go up the branch of evolution, lose the hair, lose the pronounced philtrum, the distance from the upper lip and the bottom of the nose, the cranial ridges, the conical head, the big pronounced jaw, the ability to excrete from their scent glands in their armpits, and lose their body hair, and they would become us, the hairless bipedal. Our ancestor is the Sasquatch, and they are the perfect human because of laws, very strict laws. And we are the ones that, as you stated, have progressed with technology. I have walked away from the concrete world. And once I ran out of cigarettes and coffee, I went feral. And I was in there for months. And I did not regress. I progressed back to bliss, harmony, and balance. And that's what Sasquatch shamanism, which I coined and which I'm advocating, and which, social media, I'm using it more and more, especially on my TikTok when I'm with Biggie, the big Sasquatch behind me when I go to work. I'll do one tomorrow. Sasquatch shamanism, it's there. You just have to read the books that all of the amazing authors have put together, male and female, about Sasquatch. Sure, a lot of it's speculative and guessing, but others like Dr. John Bindernagel, David Paulides, John Green, Russell Accord, the list goes on. What they've given us is given us the pieces of the puzzle of the understanding of Sasquatch shamanism. And how Sasquatch is there to teach us something. Like, I don't think you'll remember because you're too young, but back in the 70s, there was a TV commercial of an Indian with buckskin and long salt and pepper hair. Actually, an Italian actor, but on YouTube you can watch it.
Was that the one with the single
Indian
tear?
paddling in. Yeah, with the tear. See, he paddles into the urban environment, sees the garbage dump, the traffic jams, the effluent, and the list goes on. And at the end of the 30-second commercial, Ford Falcon goes racing down the freeway, and the guy throws a bag of fast food wrappers at his feet, and a tear comes down his cheek. That would springboard Greenpeace and every other environmental organization that we have right now. And I always say, what's the worst invasive species to an Indian in North America, aka Sasquatch Island?
Humans.
A non-Indian environmentalist. They're the modern day General Custer Indian killers, stopping mining, fishing, fracking, pipelining, logging. They don't care about the Indians that lose their jobs in our coastal communities and isolated communities, and our suicide and deaths by drugs and alcohol go up because poverty kills. And that's what environmentalism on an extreme level, everything's about a balance. And that's what Sasquatch teaches us, how to get back to the tumble home to balance, harmony. And we need to get there. We need another springboard, another kick like the Indian Italian actor in the 70s. We need to have conclusive proof of the existence of Sasquatch to smack us upside the head like a rogue Sasquatch smacks a disrespectful Sasquatch investigator or a Sasquatch killer, hunter, and get that reality check that we cannot go on this peasant course we are on. What you termed as the progression with technology is actually a regression if we continue to go on its present path. But if we look, and we don't have to act like a Sasquatch again and lose our clothes and get hairy again. Oh, God, hairy-legged woman. But anyway, getting to that tumble home, getting to that balance where we're not clear-cutting as vast as what we are and have done, where we're not fracking like we used to, or we're not urban sprawling like we do, or we're not overfishing as we've been doing and are still doing. Alaska's crashing, just like British Columbia crashed. And I'm evidence of the crash of the British Columbia commercial fisheries and native food fisheries. There's native Indians in Alaska and the Yukon right now that haven't eaten salmon in almost 8 years because the factory trawlers are decimating them, going after pollock and other fish and intercepting the salmon that are out in the ocean. So none are returning to the rivers to spawn. So that's what we need to look at Sasquatch as. That is an elusive creature that will peek behind a tree at us and then back away and blend and disappear because they hate us, despise us, loathe us, fear us, and know we have nothing good to gain them by interacting with the hairless bipedal. So we got to dummy up. Rogue Sasquatch smacks you in the head. Sasquatch shamanism. That's the path we have to go down.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. But before we get into this commercial break, if you hate ads, well, you can get ad-free and early access on Patreon for just $1 a month. And it's a great way to support the show. And if you'd like some extra video content and merch store discounts, there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available for most. Now let's get to the commercial break so we can hop back in the show. And we are back. So let's hop right in. I mean, that shows the bias of humans in general, though, that we think that we're more advanced than any other creature on this planet, but yet we're the ones that are dependent on, again, the grocery store, like you'd mentioned, all this different stuff. And I mean, you just take the smallest animal in the wild, and they're out there, they're finding every piece of anything they need. They're finding their food, they're finding shelter. So, I mean, if you're really breaking it down from a natural standpoint, every single animal down to the smallest bug is more intelligent than we are. It's just a matter of we have our own self-bias of what we assume intelligence is, and we deem intelligence to be being able to read, being able to do this, being able to do that, where when you're in that natural environment, there's absolutely no need for any of that type of stuff. So that intelligence that we're considering intelligence is absolutely worthless information when you're actually out in the wild and just trying to survive.
Yeah. But anyway, I better wrap it up here. The wind's picking up quite a bit, and I think we might lose our power.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Before that,
I would love
everyone out there, you're listening, show your intelligence, talk to this fine gentleman here and say, hey, get Tom back on and we'll talk about the conspiracy of Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah, I already definitely want to have you back on for sure. I wanted to dive into your encounters too. We didn't even get a chance to talk about more than like one or two of them there.
Like I say, I don't like going podcasts just once. It's up to the viewers, the listeners. If you want me to come back, I'll come on, talk about my encounters. Had some really good ones, and you can look at my art. You can go to SasquatchIsland.com. That's my website. It's got my expeditions page. Scroll to the bottom of the homepage and look at my map links to the Vancouver Island Sasquatch map that I've helped a friend of mine produced with a lot of my encounter reports and my experiences. They have these little balloons, and you touch icon, it opens up. It's really interesting, and we should get soon the Olympic Peninsula one up on the homepage as well for here that I'm putting together. And then you got the art gallery page, which has all my Sasquatch and other native art that I do. And, take a look at the website. You'll like it. Sasquatch Island on Facebook, Sasquatch Island TikTok, and YouTube. Sasquatch Island, and grab a beverage, go to the bathroom, sit down, watch the YouTube channel. I'm going to take you to places most people never see, because I was a commercial fisherman in the last 10 years. I was out there with my cell phone recording where we've read reports in John Green's books about Butedale. We've gone with Les Stroud to Clem 2. And here I am out there commercial fishing at those places telling you about the Sasquatch reports I've heard from there, because I spent a lifetime as a commercial fisherman sitting there with a coffee cup on a deck asking people, what do you know about Sasquatch? And they would spew. That's why Les got the idea to go to Clem 2. He was listening to me and communicating with me in emails. But yeah, I'm here, I'm here to help you get a close encounter of the hairy kind, whether it be an expedition with me in Forks or up in Vancouver Island, or if you just want to join Sasquatch Island on Facebook, which I recommend, and scroll your way to the beginning in 2015. And afterwards, you will have a very good understanding of how to have a close encounter of the hairy kind. But I thank you very much for having me on your show.
I appreciate you for making the time to come on, and I'll, of course, include all those links down in the show description so everybody can find it quick and easy. And I'm probably more than likely going to end up scooping one of your pieces of art myself, because I would absolutely love to have one in the studio, on top of your book that you, of course, mentioned too. Hold on tight, guys. This is our last commercial break, but if you have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show, IKNOWSQUATCH, Snarly Out Natural Products, Cryptoteeology, and Big Ape Threads, and our other friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available down in the show notes. And we are back, so let's hop right in. But before we completely wrap up, I always like to end the show with words of wisdom. So I know that you were talking a little bit about some words of wisdom at the end there with Sasquatch shamanism, but just for the wrapping up the show, if there's any words of wisdom you could bestow on the listeners, what might it be?
Always respect Sasquatch, because they always respect us in most cases, unless they're a rogue, then they're a cannibal, and get the hell out of there if you're near a rogue. And you'll see bones all over the place in their killing structures where they jump out and different things like that. But words of wisdom is show them respect. Be like us North American Indians. We know that we will never think about hunting, harming, killing, disrespecting a Sasquatch. Do the same, even though you're not North American Indian. Always respect them. Do not support those people that want to kill them. Actually, do what you can to stop them. And, words of wisdom, get a hold of me if you want some more insight. And I wrote the Chance Encounters and Investigating of Sasquatch recommendations for regulations and laws. I put that together, and I'm happy to email it to everyone. And it's just so that we can really step up, know our history, so we're never destined to repeat its failures. And, I touched on conspiracy. Gatling gun was invented for one reason and one reason only: eradicate North American Indians so they can take over the lands and everything. And those same Gatling guns, which are massively perfected from the original, are in gunships with night vision, eradicating Sasquatches deep in the forest in North America. The reports are coming out. I saw a leaked video from a helicopter. So words of wisdom, let's get with the program and wise up and understand that Sasquatches are just members of the other tribe. They're out there. They're not mythology. And let's try to get some regulation and laws in place to protect them and their environment, which is also ours.
Well, I definitely completely agree with that. And I've said it more than enough times in the show that I'm completely no-kill when it comes to these things. But again, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your perspective, and giving people a better insight, at least from the Native American perspective. Because again, a lot of the time people don't want to come on and talk about these family stories. So I personally thank you for being one of the people that's out and actually trying to correct this information out in the Sasquatch community.
Thank you very much.
If anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram or Facebook are the ones that I am the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission forms, and there, of course, is 2 of those available on the link tree. The first of which is to contact me, and the second one is to report an encounter. So while you're there, if you have any weird encounters or experiences, don't forget to report those to ommencounterreports@outlook.com. And if it's any easier for you guys can always text or call into the hotline number, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys didn't catch that, it is also down in the show notes. And every single thing that I've mentioned today is all available in the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with the mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities,